All right, Saul.
Hey,
Saul, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Houston, Texas.
Tell me about how you grew up.
So both my parents been married since 30 years ago. Had a very good childhood actually. My parents provided everything they could financially, emotionally, and so on. I mean, I have a twin brother. We'd always go to summer camp and on crazy family vacations and so on. And I also had a lot of support from my grandparents who lived across the street from my family, and they would hang out with me and my brother, pick us up from school, that sort of thing. So it was really an ideal childhood, actually.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
What kind of kid were you in high school?
Pardon me?
What kind of kid were you in high school?
Man, I was a kid that was always getting in trouble. That was the first thing that came to mind for me. I mean, I was a smart kid. I went to private high school in Houston, St. John's, and it's a prestigious school and everything, but I was always getting sent outside of the classroom because I had poor impulse control, so I would blurt out random videos I saw on the internet and do things like that. So I was getting in trouble a fair amount, but I'd still say I was a good kid despite that. I think that I always had my friends' best interests, and I think I grew up a lot from middle school where I was actually more disrespectful to peers and so on. I felt like I was just more impulsive and a little still immature in high school, but I think I was a lot nicer of a guy.
Was your twin brother similarly?
See, that's an interesting point. My twin brother and I were both in the same friend group really in middle school, and
identical twin or just twin?
No, fraternal. We're just twin brothers. Yeah, fraternal. But we had the same friend group really in middle school, and so we were pretty similar in that we were always making jokes and so on. And actually, at the end of 8th grade, my brother did a speech for student council where he made fun of a lot of things in the school and just totally went off script. And he had a talking to with our principal, and that actually really shaped him up in high school. And he was a lot more by the book, really committed to his studies, ended up going, Ivy League and everything.
But as a fraternal twin, he's definitely his own person.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually a little bit difficult for me to cope with at times, because I would have people sometimes come up to me and say, oh, how does it feel that Gabe is the smart twin and so on? And I think, damn, what am I, chopped liver? And apparently yes, because he was going on and doing all these great things, and I kind of was left behind in my immaturity, it seemed like.
It's hard having siblings because it always ends up being a comparison.
Right. I mean, if I was an only child, it would just be, okay, this guy's, a jokester or whatever, but, oh, this guy's a jokester and his brother is going to win the Nobel Prize someday or something. I mean, that's a little bit more daunting, I would say.
What did you do for work when you were done? Did you go to college?
I went to undergrad at Trinity in San Antonio. Now I'm actually in graduate school at Southern Methodist in Dallas. I'm doing a degree in mental health counseling, but I work part-time. But
how old are you?
I'm 25 years old, yeah.
And what kind of things did you want to do with your career?
See, so that, this has really influenced my whole life, I guess, is my career aspirations. I mean, from an early age, I thought I was going to be a sports broadcaster. I was very obsessed with the Houston Astros. Even when they were losing over 100 games, I was their number one supporter. I remember sharing a story once to the media about how the Astros lost a random regular season game, and I beat the wall in my room with my belt because I was so angry, and I chipped the wall. So sports was in my blood. I thought, I'm going to be a broadcaster. My parents actually sent me to a sports broadcasting camp in Boston one summer, and then later sent me to some sports communication summer program. So that was always in my blood, and I had my own catchphrase. I remember I would tell everyone, guys, don't steal this, but when I'm an announcer, I'm going to say at the end of the game, paper or plastic, because this ball game is in the bag. And I thought, man, I'm the smartest guy out there. So that was what I wanted. And then really transformed from that once I really got into sports betting. And then I figured being a sports announcer would kind of be antithetical to getting away from the world of gambling.
And gambling kind of took hold?
Yeah, sports betting. So I figure should maybe delve into that unless you want me to go a different
that's why
direction.
You're here.
Yeah, absolutely. That is why I'm sitting here. So yeah, just a little backstory of how I got there. Or?
Yeah. How did it start?
Okay, so I mean,
First off, is it in your family? Do anyone else?
Yeah, actually, that's there is a hereditary component I think that people often overlook. My dad's father was a huge gambler back in Algeria, where he's from, and I heard he was banned from casinos in France and Algeria. He would pawn my grandma's jewelry to pay off his debts and so on. So he had that problem. So it is somewhere in the family. My history with gambling actually doesn't start with the sports betting I was doing in college. So from a very, very early age, and I don't even know what prompted it other than my own interest, but I loved scratch-off tickets. So from a young age, I remember whenever I'd go to the store with my mom, I would say, oh, can I have $1 or $2, go play the scratch-offs on the machine. And every now and again she'd say, sure, whatever. And get scratch-offs in my birthday cards and holiday cards. And I remember I would be so interested in it. And then my brother would have the same scratch-off cards. And he would just say, oh, what the hell, I'm just gonna scratch them. And I would stand over his shoulder watching, saying, oh, that's only one number away from $1 million, oh, you almost got it. And so I was very intrigued by that from an early age. I also have a few other recollections of just the seeds being planted with the whole gambling interest. I was always going, well, not always, okay. I was often going with my parents and my brother to the Sam Houston racetrack in Houston. So my dad's a huge horse racing fan, and he's not a gambler actually, but big horse racing guy. And so we'd go and bet a little money on the horses, and I just have very positive memories still in my mind about the lady Margie at the ticket window. And she would always say, how are the boys doing? How's school going? And I remember thinking, man, I want to be like these guys who I didn't know were just throwing away their family, chain smoking, betting on the races overseas. That's what I wanted to be like when I was, I don't know, an 8 or 9 year old kid, because I thought I loved the horse track, the smell, there's smoke in the air. It's all very, very cool. So I had that. And then I also, on a cruise ship, so, we went on a cruise one year for summer vacation, and they had bingo on the cruise. And so my brother and I were affectionately known as the bingo boys by the people on the cruise ship. And so I remember once my mom and my brother, I think, won one of the bingo cards, and it was a few $100s, almost 600, I think. And I remember my parents pocketed the money, and I thought, God, that's so annoying. I would love to have that money. I would love to be able to do this on my own. So I had these core memories. I also, we had high school casino night at St. John's, and I convinced a kid to put 9 on number 9 on roulette. And I did the same thing, and we ended up winning. And I remember that telling me, oh, I'm good at this. I'm going to brag to all my friends. And I was able to buy Astros tickets with my casino winnings from that night. And so I have all these really good memories, not to mention I was always into fantasy baseball. And that was how my friends and I really stayed close from middle school through high school. So I already played fantasy baseball, and now here's the part that actually is directly related to my sports betting. So played fantasy baseball for years, and then my sophomore year at Trinity in undergrad, this was 2017, I had an acquaintance of mine from this camp I mentioned earlier, this sports communication camp. And he messaged me saying, oh, you're always helping me with my fantasy lineups, and now I'm on a sports book. Now I have a bookie. Why don't you hop in with me? We'll bet sports, make some money. It'll be fun. And what's crazy is I remember just not really wanting to, because I didn't want to lose the money I had in college. I didn't have a job. I just had money saved up, and I thought, well, it seems a little risky, but what the heck, put in $10. And that's crazy that's how that started, because for me, it was as casual as someone saying, hey, we're going to go bowling tonight. You want to hop in? Yeah, sure. I have nothing better to do. It wasn't, if someone asked you, hey, you want to go do a line of cocaine? I would probably say, oh, no, that's scary. But with gambling, oh, you want to go bet on baseball? Sure, whatever. So it seemed very innocent. Yeah.
Yeah. And it grew from there, right?
Absolutely. So, I try not to just bore people with all the war stories. This was the box score, this was the pitcher. No one really gives a shit. But it is important to mention the first couple games, because that is really what got something going in my mind. So I do try to do it justice by saying that first game that I bet, September 20th, 2017, the Royals against the Blue Jays, meaningless regular season game. Both teams were under 500, so they'd won fewer games than they had lost. Really bad teams. And I remember thinking, well, the Blue Jays have this pitcher who's really awful. Royals are going to win. Put down $10. And it was like I had been cursed or something, because I didn't know it at the time that this was going to fuel this compulsion or this interest, but the Royals were up 9-0 in just the second inning. So my bet had pretty much won after only like 15 to 20 minutes. And so I really convinced myself I'm the man. I know everything about sports. Everyone else is a loser. You know, I'm this winner, because I remember also when I made that bet, I was doing something on campus where I was wearing a suit and like, you know, nice pants and nice shoes. And so all of that combined, like the winning, the suit, doing it all from my phone, like, oh man, I'm so cool, man. I'm just doing all these, making these plays from my phone. I don't even have to lift a finger, make any effort in my life. I can just do this. So all of that was already going. And so I enjoyed that first win clearly, and placed a bet on football that weekend, and it was the Bears against the Steelers. And I just said, oh, you know, intuition, just gut feeling that the Bears are going to beat the Steelers. It shouldn't have happened. I mean, they were huge underdogs, and then the Bears ended up winning. So then oh man, you know, this is my game. And so I, from there, started betting more frequently, and eventually within the first few weeks, I want to say I got access to an account online. So what happened initially was I was texting this kid that my friend knew, and he would place the bet. Once the bet concluded, he would Venmo me the money that I'd won. So it was just, you know, a text exchange basically on an honor system. But then I wanted to bet more frequently, so then I was actually given access through this guy to an online account where, you know, I was set up with a web page with an account login and password, and gives you a certain amount of credit you can use to gamble for that week. And by the end of the week, it's like, okay, square up, you know, you Venmo him or he Venmos you, whatever the amount is, won or lost. So it really, I got access to a whole other dimension of this gambling universe, because before I just thought, well, I'll pick a football game. But now it's like you're online, and now some tennis match in Bulgaria is the next thing on the slate, and I have access to wagering on it. So it's a whole world of possibilities.
Did that impulse control, the lack of impulse control that you had as a kid, is that a key component in
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. And here's the thing. I mean, I'm trying not to go on a soapbox about the whole messaging that's being put forth in the industry today, in the sports betting industry, but a lot of this stuff of, oh, you know, just be responsible, just have a cool off period, do better money management. For some impulsive 19-year-old kid who's a sports junkie and has this compulsive drive, none of that stuff came into play. I mean, I was initially not even considering the potential to get sucked into it. I just figured, and maybe this is just my issue, but my thought process was, I'm good at this, I enjoy it, and I'm winning money. So I'm a moron for only betting $10. You know, why would I not bet $50 because I'd want 50 instead of 10? I mean, that's clear. So that's definitely played into it. I didn't have this rational approach to it. And that may not be the case for everyone. I mean, I'm not here to tell you that every single person who places a sports bet is going to be in the throes of despair. I just think that it's important to recognize that it does happen, and it happens to people that would be considered book smart like myself. I mean, private school education through 6th grade and so on. I mean, I'm not an idiot, but I'm behaving like one. And I think that a lot of people don't recognize that there is personal responsibility involved, but then at a certain point, it's just this compulsive drive, this impulse you were mentioning.
And those memories of hitting the right number on the roulette wheel, and then winning, you know, the Bears game and just making a bunch of money. Those memories are etched into your brain. Oh,
I'm sure forever, and I don't try to relive the glory days and, you know, try to remember what, you know, that felt like so I can bask in the high of it or anything like that. But I think it is important to recognize, like, at least for me, that stuff is always there. And so while I'm not gambling now, I haven't gambled for about 3 years and just about 10 months, but it's something I have to treat every day, this problem. And I don't think that's discussed well enough out in society. It's like, okay, you have a gambling problem, stop gambling, the end. But I think for me, the stopping part was easier than staying stopped, because when there's so much pressure, and I know it's said in different recovery fellowships, like, oh, a baby will take his hand off a hot stove or something. Like, when the pressure becomes enough, anyone will stop. But how do you stay stopped 5 months later when your finances look better, people start to trust you, and there's a tennis match on, no one's home? Like, how do I prevent myself from going back into it at that point? And that's where, there's a lot of hard work and so on, where I think it's not being recognized now, and we're just starting to see how this problem is going to look across the country.
And there's all kinds of brain chemistry things going on. The endorphins, the adrenaline that gets jacked up when you win or even lose, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I've heard that a near win, a close loss or something, elicits the same sort of response in the brain, and that the response of a gambling addict's brain is similar to that of a cocaine addict, I think is how it's been described. And I know there was just a lot going on. And what I think is also important to share is that it's such a dangerous addiction to have, because it's all mental. So, with alcohol, of course, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it by saying if you put down the alcohol, you're not going to be drunk. I mean, of course, there's more to it, of the emotional sobriety and so on, but at least there is a physical component to it. Whereas gambling it's just mental. There's a mental response to the action of placing a bet. So you're getting high pretty much within your mind without ingesting anything, without drinking anything. And so it's like, I can't escape my mind unless I just die. And I think that's why there is such a high suicide rate associated with this problem, because people cannot take the mental torment that they have to deal with hour after hour, even when they're not gambling, thinking about the next bet, thinking about the next lie they have to tell, not being able to sleep because, Dae-Ho Lee just hit a grand slam over in Korea, and you have to make sure you documented that. I mean, it's crazy. So, it's a mental problem, really.
And most of the compulsive gamblers that I've interviewed or met have all been very intelligent, not on drugs. Alcohol sometimes comes into the picture, but for the most part, they're stand-up citizens that are just compulsively gambling.
Right. No, I think that's a great point, Mark.
And losing their marriages, their homes, their jobs, everything.
Well, I think what's really a sort of fascinating case study into this problem is you take me, and I'm, not going to speak for everyone. I'm speaking for me. You look at myself, grew up to a really privileged household. Parents were together. Parents were nurturing, always at my baseball games, everything. Sent me to the best private school in Houston. Yep, I said that, Kincaid and Episcopal St. John's #1. But best private school in Houston, always had manners, was always polite. Yes, I had impulsive issues and so on, but I'm not the type of person I think of when I think this guy is an addict, because growing up, it's like we never even had conversations much at all at home about don't do this drug or that drug. Because, first of all, I don't even think my parents knew what any of that stuff was, the very specific niche drugs, because they were never put in that situation. And so it's like not even an afterthought. It's like, why would you even think that you need to tell your sons not to become addicts or whatever, because it's just naturally not going to happen. And then all of a sudden this gambling thing comes up. Well, people think they're so intelligent because there are factors that seem like they can be controlled by intelligence, such as gauging how the weather will impact the score of a game or the wind conditions and so on. And I think that's a unique part of gambling that does apply to intelligence, where, I've never ingested hard drugs or anything, but I could think, oh, I'm going to take this drug and I'm going to get high, end of story. With gambling, it's like, well, I need to plan how I'm going to win or how I'm going to manage my bankroll and so on. So there's a lot of mental calculation that goes into it. And if we have time, I definitely want to share the little secret that the industry has to try to convince you that you have some sort of edge. So yeah, can I share that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so One of my buddies, actually, who's a recovering compulsive gambler, was telling me that long ago he had some bogus web page like Wizards of Las Vegas or just some gimmicky website. And pretty much how it works, and this is referring to people that claim that they're tipsters and they'll give you the best picks on the games if you subscribe to their webpage. So anyway, it's a little backstory. So pretty much what these guys do is, say you have a base of 600 customers on your site, okay? So for the first pick that I'm giving all 600 of my customers, say it's a game between the Celtics and the 76ers. So I split my participants down the middle. I assign 300 of them, I give them the Sixers as their pick. 300 of them, I give the Celtics. So automatically, one group is 1 for 1. The other group is 0 for 1. And I keep splitting the pool. So you see, if you keep doing it enough times, you are guaranteed to have some guy who's 6 for 6 based on the picks that you gave him. And it's just math. It's not that they know anything about the game or anything. And they don't care that they have whatever guy that's 0 for 6, because they just need the testimony from the guy who is 6 for 6. And that person will have the statements to verify it. They'll show you all the picks you gave them. They'll show you that they made those bets and that you were 6 for 6. And that's what gets people buying into these referral services. So
many different hustles.
Yeah, it's crazy, because you'll go on one of those websites and it'll say, well, the reason why I'm 6 for 6 is because my cousin is the trainer for this team and he gave me this. It's all BS. It's just, we just split the pool enough times to where someone had to turn up 6 for 6 on their picks. And it's crazy, because really, when you look at a lot of these TV shows on major networks now, they have all these shows dedicated to prop bets and over under 2.5 strikeouts for this pitcher. And it's very dangerous in my mind, because first of all, you're giving people this illusion that they can be good gamblers and that they can win at this system and so on. And you're, fueling that dream world. But at the same time, you're also endorsing specific methods of gambling that are very harmful and have the potential to become addictive, because now you're not telling people who's going to win. You're telling someone who to bet on in this inning and this player, and it speeds it up to where that can progress really quickly. And I think this whole digital landscape of gambling is a whole lot more addictive than when you were looking at someone's sketchy uncle going to Atlantic City for a weekend. I mean, this is 24/7. You can lose your house while you're naked laying in bed. I mean, it's really absurd, but it's true. And that's why I think this topic really needs to be addressed in a truthful, honest, whatever. I'm losing my mind, but it needs to be addressed.
It seems like a lot of it is, it's not intelligence, as we just spoke about.
Right.
It's almost like your brain chemistry, your lack of impulse control is what drives you. And even though it's a racket, it's set up to work against you, you're still going to do it. Even though you're not drunk and you're intelligent and you understand that it's a racket, you still believe that you can win.
Well, that's the scary thing, I think, is that really, once a person has become addicted, they're now performing this activity against their own will. And it really is like being in a prison of one's own making. And, what's helped me is, and I don't name any program or fellowship, whatever, because of, the anonymity and so on, but I've been in a program that has taught me to not fight against it, because this whole idea of being strong and I'm just going to use my willpower, I mean, it sounds good in like an action movie, but in reality, it's really actually detrimental, because fighting the compulsion, I mean, it's just a battle that can't be won. So doing a lot of journaling, doing a lot of phone calls, going to fellowship meetings of people that are like-minded, struggle with the same issue, really opens up my mind, at least, to alternatives that are healthier and don't involve this gambling. And of course, for me, there was a bit of a withdrawal process. I mean, mentally having that urge and I need to call someone, I need to do some writing, because like I mentioned, it is a thinking problem. And so writing stuff out has been really helpful and freeing in seeing what's true, what's not true, and really giving me a healthier perspective.
But what was your lowest point?
So financially or emotionally or just, I mean.
Both, whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay, so little context. I mean, I say my date in my program.
I don't mean to laugh at it. But,
No, it's
but
funny.
I can relate to these gambling
I get
stories.
it. Yeah, no.
I think I have this gene too.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't gamble, but
right.
doing a project like this is
it
a form of
its
gambling
own
too.
risk. Yeah. But no, I mean, I say my abstinence clean date is July 18th of 2019, and I wouldn't even say that was my lowest point really, because in August of that same year, so that next month, I had been clean from gambling for about a month, and I was like a dry drunk, as is sometimes referred to. So I wasn't in action, but I wasn't getting better emotionally, spiritually. I just wasn't betting. I mean, I didn't have a resource. I was messaging all these people, trying to get them to give me more credit and put me on a website, and I wasn't finding it. So anyway, I wasn't gambling, but I remember the girl I was dating at the time broke up with me then in August, because I was just a really awful person toward her. And I just remember when she dumped me, I just remember it was like everything kind of came to this boiling point where I recognized that my whole life was pretty much toast. And I've reached out to a mentor of mine, and I said, hey, would you please tell this girl, if I don't gamble for the next 6 months, tell her I've changed, tell her to get back with me, and like everything will be okay. And this guy told me, you have no shot of changing or being abstinent from gambling or anything unless you start really working on yourself. You're being very stubborn and things like that. And so he was basically showing me how serious the situation was, that this was a life or death situation. And I don't know that that's something that people are really comfortable talking about, because it is a sensitive subject, but it needs to be talked about, because that's the issue that I'm dealing with is an issue of life or death. And I think that was my lowest point, was realizing, okay, first of all, I was like 20 grand in the hole with money I didn't have, because I was doing all these bets with different bookies that were extending credit and so on.
At what age?
Like 19, 20, 21.
It's a lot of money for
money I didn't have. I mean,
for a kid.
Yeah. I mean, I had some money that my parents had given me to spend at school, but it wasn't like I was waiting on my next Bugatti or anything. I mean, I was getting by because I didn't really have any expenses. But
if you're gambling 20 grand, if you're in the whole 20 grand at 20 years old,
it's a lot. It's like each year of my life, I was adding another 1,000 to that, which is a lot. Yeah.
It's going to double every year.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that's this whole other issue. But I think to wrap up that question of my lowest point was just recognizing that, and it wasn't even, the money wasn't the biggest deal to me then. And I think that that's overlooked as well, is that, yes, I cared about the money. Yes, I wanted that money back, and I regretted losing it and so on. But it was the whole development of my life to that point. It was like, dude, your parents spent all this money for you to go to these great schools. You were given every opportunity. And instead, you just decided you're just going to gamble your life away. And you don't have a girlfriend, don't have meaningful relationships. It couldn't be honest to anyone, such a liar. And yeah, it was a culmination of all of those things, really.
Is it something about your self-worth that also is in play here?
With the whole gambling?
Where you just I don't know how to word this any better than this, but just saying, like, thinking that you don't believe you deserve a better life than to suffer, and
I think that is a big part of it too. I know, like,
the more you respect and love yourself, the less you're going to risk
right,
destroying
absolutely.
your life.
Well, I think, I mean, a lot of that, and I'm not going to go into a whole therapy session here, but I think that I did have issues with self-esteem and so on. And a little brief anecdote, I mean, I remember the after party of prom in high school. All my buddies were drinking alcohol, and I think some were like smoking weed or smoking whatever. And I just remember that really hitting me, and I was thinking, I'm being left behind. I don't drink or anything, and I've had this pit in my stomach, like, I'm not cool anymore. No one's gonna think I'm cool. I'm not invited to any parties. I would always get really scared and nervous that my other friends were going to parties and so on. And I remember just that night, I tried to drink a non-alcoholic beer and ended up like spilling it on myself and crying about the whole thing. And it's just like this whole situation made me feel really pathetic, that I was about to go off to college and I was a loser and I didn't have anything that was cool. And then,
peer pressure.
Oh, what's up?
Peer pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, it extended into joining a fraternity in school, and I remember the first night of orientation, they said, "Hey, who here is still a virgin?" And I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So I don't think anyone else raised their hand, and so from that point on, their whole motto was GSL, get Saul laid. And I remember thinking, well, I mean, what was I doing in high school? I was just playing video games and like playing basketball. I wasn't going out on wild like sex parties or anything.
Peer pressure's a bitch.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy. So they even put it on, like we had a brick that was a part of our, frat ensemble that had designs and so on, and say GSL. And I remember, because I brought all my frat stuff home, so I remember for the longest time I would come home when I'd see my family in Houston and I'd see that stupid brick in the garage and just say GSL, and my parents probably, that's just they probably never thought about it, and it's just laying there. So every time my dad's driving me home from dinner, it's like, oh, you need to get laid, son. I mean, it's just right there as just a reminder. And so there was that feeling too. And I think gambling for me really gave me this high that I didn't have from those things. So I'm not getting laid. I'm not having sex at this point. I'm also not drinking. I'm not doing this. And at least I have gambling,
And you're not tight with all your buds,
right?
Doing the same drugs they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, well, if I'm gambling, I actually am more powerful than everyone else, because no one else was really doing it. And I was. And I thought, well, with all this money that I'm making from it, and at least early on I was, and I thought that was what would give me self-esteem, give me power, and so on.
What's helped you? You're doing good for a while right now. It's been years now that you've been staying away from that. What's helped you the most, you think?
I think what's helped the most is the fellowship I have with the people that are also gamblers. I think without that, I mean, it's such an isolating problem, and I think that it wouldn't seem that way.
It becomes a secret for each
losing
gambler, right?
So many, there's so many lies, and I think it doesn't seem that way maybe because with sports, it's a team game. People watch sports together, but sports betting, at least at the level I was doing it, was very isolating, completely in my own mind.
You never talk about the losses.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think I would sometimes talk about them, but only in a weird sort of bragging way, like, dude, I lost 5 G's, whatever, like as if it were some sort of flex, like, oh, I can just lose that. It's no big deal. So it was a very backward way of describing the losses when they happened, but now I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, the connection. The connection has been what's really kept me on the right path, because it's like now if I have people I'm talking to every day that are also dealing with this issue and actually relying on me for some support and so on, it's like I want to be accountable to those people. But I think something that really has been helpful to me, and I don't know that it's really talked about either, is that I have all this stuff to fall back on. Like there was a lot of incentive for me to get clean because of family opportunity, going to a school that would provide really good networking opportunities, having stuff to fall back on. So I think there is a lot of motivation for someone like myself to want to get clean at a young age, but that doesn't account for people that are older or people that have no family, no money. They're living out here like on Skid Row or something, and they're a gambling addict. Well, what is going to motivate them to change? Because they probably know that they're destroying themselves, but at the very least, it's numbing them from the bleak nature of reality. At least for me, when I stopped, it's like, okay, my parents are taking me back in, my friends are supportive. Everything is just about normal. I'm still paying back my debts, and I can't gamble safely again, but so be it. And I wish I had a great little answer for how people that are in poverty and so on can stop gambling. I mean, I guess I would just advertise that my life has gotten a lot better, and I believe that their lives would also get better if they stopped, but it's very hard to convince someone, I think, really.
All right, Saul, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
I love this topic.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.